Hello everyone, welcome to the 8th Product Growth Masterclass with Arun. Arun is the Chief Growth Officer at Freshworks and he's been with Freshworks for last 2 years or more than 2 years. Good to have you here, Arun.
Nice to be participating in this product growth initiative, Ajay, and thanks for hosting me.
Thank you. So Arun, just to get started, I would like to request you to maybe, for the last 2 years that you've been Freshworks, you've seen a rapid growth at Freshworks, right? And I think even at the scale it was, it has still defied the odds and grown really, really nicely. So maybe a quick word of that so that, we can just set the context so that everyone in the audience knows, where you're coming from.
Definitely. So like you mentioned, I serve as the Chief Growth Officer at Freshworks, and I joined the company just about 2 years ago. In fact, I just completed my second anniversary last week at Freshworks. And I was brought into Freshworks to run the revenue marketing function, which includes all quota carrying roles on the marketing side, which includes digital marketing, content marketing, field marketing, but also the global SDR function, which rolls up under me. And when I was brought on board, I think we have significantly evolved the marketing function since the time I came on board. So just based on the journey that Freshworks was on at that time that I joined, we had a lot of marketing silos within the company because we have so many products. We have about 8 to 10 products in our kitty. And we had originally structured all marketing teams around each of those individual products. But as we started growing and as we started scaling, we found the need to centralize the marketing engine and bring more structure and functional depth. And that's largely been my mandate since the time I came in streamlining and scaling and setting up the marketing function in a way where we are centralizing, specializing, and building functional depth so that we are able to scale towards our goal and vision of being a publicly run $1 billion revenue company. So to do that, I think there's a lot of groundwork to be done. And I think that's probably been my biggest area of focus in the last 2 years.
Awesome. Arun, and I'm sure we'll get into that because in fact, the title of this conversation is driving hypergrowth by identifying the marketing efforts and team structures that the startups can use at different stages of the journey.
Yeah.
Right. So I think we'll get into that. But before that, I think first question I guess people end up asking is how does one pick the right growth and marketing strategy?
Yeah.
Right? In this regard, there's some work that we have done at Accel, and I would like to just quickly get your comments on that.
Sure.
So here's a framework that my colleague Ankit and I had put together. Right, it is a 2x2, 4 quadrants that you can see on the x-axis is the product.
Yep.
Product if its value is easy to understand for users. If you have to talk to customers, explain to them what the value is or how your product is better than someone else's product, then that becomes complex. Right? On the y-axis is buying environment. If the user or customer himself or herself can buy the product, then that becomes a simple buying environment. But if they need to pull in some other stakeholders, then that becomes a complex product. Right? So as you can see, there are four possible motions that are possible. Right?
Yeah.
I wanted to get your perspective on this, especially because you have spent time with various companies, very interesting companies, like InMobi, Hotstar, and now more in the last 2 years with Freshworks.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about how do you look at this? Where do you place these different companies that you work with?
Sure. I think the first step to designing a marketing organization to me is to first understand the category and the buying environment that you operate in, because that defines the go-to-market motion, and the go-to-market motion then defines the marketing motion as well. Right. And if I really try to slot the 3 companies that have played a major role in my career so far, which is say InMobi, Hotstar, and Freshworks now, I think this framework, maybe helps everyone think about, how they should be looking at their marketing organization. For instance, if I take a look at InMobi is an ad tech platform, and on one side we have advertisers and the other side we have publishers. when you look at the advertising side of the environment, you have probably a handful of advertisers who control about 80% of the ad dollars who are which are spent in the ecosystem, right? So you have a handful of customers to go after on the one side of the marketplace. And on the other side of the marketplace, you have these millions of app developers who are looking to monetize their platform through ads, right? Because most of the apps that they build are free of cost. And if you really, when I look at the product complexity, I would really place it as a pretty complex product. Simply because the ad tech ecosystem it has become very complex. If you think about it, there is a buyer side platform, there's a seller platform, there is a DMP, DSP, SSP, programmatic, exchange. I mean, I think the number of jargons that are thrown around in the ad tech space, it's extremely hard for an outsider to truly understand. And sometimes you also speak, even though you're speaking to digital marketers, right? Not everybody completely understands the landscape and where in the value chain a particular product or a particular company fits. So from that perspective, when I think of InMobi, when I reflect upon my InMobi as a business, I think it was a fairly complex product operating in a complex buying environment. And the reason I say it's a complex buying environment is because, it's very hard to win market share for ad dollars that are being spent. Unless you are the top two players, right? The top two players, be it the Facebooks and the Google, control a significant chunk of the advertising dollars that are spent. But to be able to create that differentiation and stand out, there is a lot of buyer education that is required. There is a lot of credibility that you need to build by working with industry bodies to build that thought leadership, sitting on the boards of some of the central authorities which kind of govern the ad tech ecosystem, be it the IAB or the Interactive Advertising Bureau or the Mobile Marketing Associations of the world. So the conversations that marketing has and the role that marketing has is very, very strategic. And I would say a lot of the marketing work that happens is more in the realm of brand and product marketing, where you are constantly educating the customer about what the product is, how different it is, and building credibility and thought leadership. That is a huge role in that environment. So to me, it's almost it falls in the complex segment. When I look at Hotstar is first of all a completely different example. It's a B2C product, and there is no major need to educate a end user or a consumer about the value of the product. Everyone is looking for entertainment. And it's more so important. It's more relevant in today's times, where everyone is locked up and cooped up in their homes and looking for easy to access entertainment, right? So it's a well-established category. You play based on the quality of content that you have and the pricing that you place. So Hotstar, in that sense, was to me a very simple product. And I would say in terms of the buying environment, it was simple as well. And the tactics that you would probably use is one of digital performance-led marketing and branding to build brand perception and equity amongst your customers. So there, the marketing motions were simply, hey, heavy investments in digital marketing, heavy investments in branding, and it's a very lean and mean marketing team which works through a ton of agencies, etc., to drive marketing on the ground. Right. If I reflect about Freshworks is very interesting because as a company we have evolved. Right. When we started out, I would say we were in most of our products we are not category creators. We are challengers. Right. We operate in a fairly well-established category with very large legacy incumbents. So always we think of ourselves as the David versus Goliath sort of a situation where we're going up against and trying to disrupt the status quo in an existing well-established category. But if you really look at the value proposition of the Freshworks suite of products, and if you take Freshdesk for a moment, which at the end of the day a customer support tool, almost every small and medium-sized business would need a customer support tool, and perhaps will not want to invest in a fairly complex, high-value product, which takes tons of time to implement, and it has a lot of hidden costs, right? So they want a off-the-shelf, easy-to-use product, and if that, and they're oftentimes the small and medium size companies are looking for these products actively online,
Right.
and their search for a product starts with Google search. And probably goes on to a comparison website where they discover through Google search, they're searching for, say, a help desk software or a customer support software. Right. Then they go to a G2 Crowd or a Captera to look at various players in the space, look at the reviews, build their own perception, and then they come and sign up for a free trial. They use the product for a period of time, say 20-21 days, and then they decide whether they want to upgrade to a premium plan. Right. So in this case, the role that it's a largely inbound-led motion. It is a marketing-led motion, and it is self-discovery and self-serve based. Right? So that is how we started. Right. When we started, I would still say we were in the simple sort of a environment where we had a simple product in a simple buying environment. We could literally run with spending money on Google AdWords and then having an inside sales team to close the deals which were coming in, or the free trials who were coming in and signing up for a product. Right. But what has happened over the years is that, one, our product has matured. So we are able to increasingly meet sophisticated and more complex use cases, which are more relevant for mid-market and to some extent even in some enterprise companies. Right. So one is our product has matured. Second is our product portfolio has expanded. So we are no longer just a customer support or a customer support solution. We have a CRM solution, we have an ITSM tool, we have a marketing automation software, we have a HR platform. So our product portfolio has expanded. We are talking to different personas and buying departments within our prospect journey. So from that perspective, our buying environment is becoming more and more complex. Our products are still, I would say, maturing and therefore going towards complex. Probably they are in medium complexity right now. And we, as a guiding philosophy, we want to keep our products fairly simple and easy to use. We never want to become like the legacy players where it takes forever to implement the software and complex features. So our approach is to ensure that we are able to provide simple to medium complexity products, but our buying environment is becoming more and more complex, right? So therefore, I think today when I reflect upon the go-to-market motion and the marketing motion, it is becoming more and more complex. It's no longer just a digital marketing-led, inbound marketing-led motion, but increasingly we are having to complement that with a very strong outbound motion, an outbound motion which is created either from marketing perspective by doing events, field marketing, webinars, a lot of content and thought leadership driven marketing to drive demand, or having an SDR team which is actually doing outbound cold calling and generating sales qualified pipeline. And of course, we had to invest in sales teams in different regions, right? So which are able to provide high touch and more face time to our customers and prospects. And that's how we have grown. So we are in that zone where I would say we are becoming from a simple to we are moving towards the complex. We're somewhere in the middle, and our marketing and go-to-market motions and structures are also becoming more complex over the last few years.
Got it. And I think it'll be great to actually now start talking about that, because I think there's a lot of, complexity, or, there's a lot of moving parts that we have to, unparse and figure out, right? So maybe, get there a little bit. I think, and also just for the sake of context for everyone, I think over the last 10 years, Freshworks has acquired more than 40,000 paying customers and now has more than 200 million ARR. So the company itself has grown significantly, over the last few years, right? And so based on that, obviously the marketing function has also evolved within Freshworks, right? So, Arun, from your perspective, what you have seen, are there any patterns that you have seen during this evolution that, you have witnessed within Freshworks that other startups can benefit from?
Definitely, Ajay. So when I reflect upon the Freshworks journey and also, looking at my experience at InMobi or Hotstar, I tend to look at startups and their marketing functions evolve in 5 different stages. And I think that offers a fairly good framework for people to use to think about how to invest in what aspect of marketing as they move from seed to scale. The way I think about it is marketing has to have an impact on ultimately customer lifetime value and revenue. And so the x-axis here is time and the y-axis is customer lifetime value. And marketing's ultimate goal is to see how one can continue to optimize for or maximize customer lifetime value. But the journey doesn't start there. The journey actually starts when you are a small company which is just which has just started up. You are focused heavily on acquisition, right? And which is the stage one, which I call the growth hustle. And I know I agree with Ajay on this, that it's growth hacking is probably a fairly a tactical and a myopic view of looking at growth. It's because it's not something that you hack one time, and growth marketing is a more long-term sustainable strategy that that a company needs to evolve. Right. So the stage one is really just doubly focusing on acquisition. And there are various tactics that companies will do. Typically, the marketing teams are extremely small in size. You find people who are entrepreneurial, who are marketing generalists, but who are good at one or two things, right? Especially if you're in the SaaS space or if you're in a B2C world where you can't afford to spend on marketing. Typically the first few hires in your marketing team have to be people who are digitally savvy, people who have a flair for the various marketing tools and who are on the know of all the tools and platforms that they can use to unlock growth. And it is not just marketing as a function alone that drives growth during this phase. I think there is a heavy partnership with product that needs to happen during this stage, right? A lot of the initial set of users that you acquire come directly from the product, provided you thoughtfully create those product growth loops or hooks inside your product, right? Let me give an example, right? When Freshdesk and Fresh Chat, which is our support and chat tools, were launched, one of the major ways in which we unlock growth during the early stages without having to pay a lot of money is by ensuring that every free customer. Now, the thing to understand is most of the free customers will never convert into a paying customer, but they would be more than happy to add value, and you as a marketer can extract more value from them in many other ways. So one way to do that is, we started, introducing this powered by Freshdesk and powered by Fresh Chat sort of a widget in every email that went out for a paid user as part of their emails to end customers, or in terms of the chat widgets they had introduced on their web pages. So that drove a lot of referral traffic to the website and to our product, and drove sort of an organic loop, organic acquisition growth loop. Yeah. The second thing that we also did was, for instance, we used the free guys and identified the ones who are really happy with our product, even though they were not, they didn't convert into a paid user. They continued to be on the free plan, but they were so happy with the product that we incentivized a lot of them to actually go and write good positive reviews on some of our comparison sites and so on and so forth. So that is what I mean by hustling for growth. Is not necessarily that you have to throw money out there, etc. But how do you make the most out of the initial set of customers that you acquire? And of course, you have to bootstrap even the first 10 set of customers. And that happens, literally by doing one-to-one marketing, right? You need to know who are the best fitted prospects for your customers, go and acquire them, then leverage them to drive additional organic growth. Spend a lot of time and effort on content marketing and organic demand generation, and that's how you do that. So that's the growth hustle part. But once you get past that phase and you have established product market fit, that's when you start investing in brand. And for Freshworks, for instance, this happened 3 years back, right? We had set up Freshdesk, then we set up Fresh Service and Fresh Chat and Fresh Sales, and all of these products we kind of grew on the back of the same growth marketing strategy, which is invest on Google AdWords, do heavy content marketing or SEO focused marketing, and use these product-led growth loops to drive initial scale for the first 3-5 years, right? But there comes a point when you will not be able to scale beyond a certain point if you don't invest in building your brand, and more importantly, establishing your brand. And in our case, because we had so many of these products, there was a dire need to bring all of them together in a more meaningful umbrella brand, which is why 3 years back we rebranded from Freshdesk to Freshworks, right? And that was really the journey from where it was also important for us, because when you think about the SMB business, which was largely inbound led, right? Because you were spending on Google AdWords and people were clicking on keywords like help desk and so on. When people come inbound through keyword search, they really don't care about whether it's fresh desk or fresh service. They discover your brand based on the keywords they search for. But when you start becoming more sophisticated and you're penetrating mid-market and enterprise segments, brand plays a heavy role. And you cannot invest as a company in building so many different brands.
Yeah.
You need one holistic brand that needs to be established and around which you do your brand activations. And that was the reason we moved in 2017 from Freshdesk to Freshworks. Right.
And Arun, maybe touch upon a little bit. I think this was also the time where Freshworks invested, some amount of energy in terms of talking about how, you're helping to, fight the bloatware that is happening in the cloud, cloud software, SaaS software, right? So it was a little bit moving beyond just the functional aspects of the product, that the obviously product is simple to use.
Yes.
Has good pricing, but I think you went beyond that. Maybe touch upon a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the classic comparison is, when you start thinking about the brand, you move beyond the functional positioning to a more emotional positioning or a non-functional benefit articulation. And the classic comparison I can draw is between, hey, what kind of a product do you want to be in the long run? Do you want to be a cheap Chinese imitation of a smartphone, or do you want to be an iPhone? Right. And if you just compare feature by feature, probably the Chinese imitations have the exact same features that an iPhone has, but iPhone has built a brand equity and based on which they command a premium. And this is very, very similar to how, buyer perceptions are built even in the B2B side. Right? Yeah. So it is extremely important that you start articulating the value of your brand from a non-functional benefit perspective and appeal to the emotions that drive the buying behavior, right? So in our case, like Ajay, you called out, right? We initially started talking about how there was a need to disrupt the status quo in the world of business software. That, existing large legacy players were probably overpriced, over complex and had huge exit costs, and so people are feeling stuck, right? And they were bloated in some sense. So we played on that emotion to say, how do we, as a company, disrupt that emotion and say we are providing something far more simpler, and but of the same value. Right. Now, that is how we started. But then we slowly elevated the conversation, even from moving beyond just going against the bloated software that other players were selling, to talking about customer engagement more strategically. So, one of our stated vision as a company is to enable businesses win customers for life. Right. So if you want to enable businesses to win customers for life, then you need to be enabling them to deliver moments of wow across every single step in the customer journey, right? So that's really the approach we took in defining our brand messaging. And pretty much it's also at some level the brand message shapes the product strategy.
Exactly.
Because when that happens, you start believing and you start articulating a much grander sort of a vision for your brand, and that starts feeding into the product strategy. So what happened was, if you want to be true to delivering that value for your business, which is enabling businesses to win customers for life, then all the products that we have today in our kitty cannot be isolated siloed products, but they all have to come together to deliver moments of wow to our customers. So we started taking a platform approach to building products. Right, we moved from just having a desk versus support versus sales to actually having a platform approach where every single product was feeding off of the same platform behind the scenes to create a unified master customer record, based on which the different tools that we sell are able to deliver contextual nudges and more context-aware engagement with our end customers. Right, so that is what we have become today. We are a customer for life platform, and the way we do that is by enabling every single team that engages with the customer across different stages of the life cycle. Whether they come in through the first interaction with the prospect happens through marketing, and you need a marketing automation platform that is able to personalize and contextualize their message, but then also moving into sales, support, customer success, and so on. Right. So at some level, the brand vision that is much larger becomes much larger than the product vision, and the product strategy starts elevating itself. And that's what happened in the case of Freshworks as well. Now, that was phase 2 for us, right? But once you establish brand Freshworks, you've gone past and you've hit a certain scale barrier. We crossed $100 million in revenue. And that is around the time that, I really came in. And that is when you started, I felt the need to sort of bring method to this madness, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, if you want to scale, you need to specialize.
Yeah.
And so my philosophy around setting up the marketing engine was based off of two two pillars. One is specialization and centralization. The reality is, if you're a company which is vying to provide a wow experience to your customers and enable them to win customers for life, you need to be able to first have a unified view of your customers internally.
Sure.
Right. And to be able to do that, you need to break the marketing silos, because each marketing team, so each product had its own marketing team, right? And basically they were full stack marketers doing everything from branding to product marketing to events to PR to analyst relations to everything, but for that particular product. Yeah. But for an external world, as brand Freshworks, we needed to tell a story consistently, mm-hmm. right? And we need to appear as one brand. And to that effect, first we had to re-engineer, reorganize ourselves. So that's when you start specializing in different areas of marketing. So we deepened our focus by setting up the brand marketing function, the product marketing function, and the growth marketing function, with dedicated operational teams which are focused on marketing operations and infrastructure, which is a very, very critical aspect, because once you hit a certain scale barrier, you need to start investing in marketing tools and technology that can unlock scale and growth for your company, right? And the way you also hire for each of these roles becomes very nuanced. So you're no longer looking for full stack marketers. You're not looking for generalists. You're looking for specialists, right? People who are very, very deep in maybe one or two aspects of marketing, and they come in and deliver that value for your team, right? So almost the first 7 to 8 months of my time was spent on, articulating what a fully scaled marketing organization should look like, and then identifying the right talent, to fill those pods.
Got it.
So that is I would say that is where we are today as Freshworks in our current journey. But this is a point where you kind of sometimes you have to slow down a bit before you start accelerating, right? Because these things take time: building, reorganizing, hiring the right folks, and then to start seeing results. So that is it's a very important investment to make as a business. Right. But once you do that, once you have the right marketing infrastructure to scale, and you have the specialized skill sets and the specialized teams, then you have to go back to, I wouldn't say go back to the drawing board, but take a step back again and see if your brand is accelerating as much as your business is. Right. And this is because, as a company, if I reflect upon our journey, you are constantly growing. You've gone past the 100 million ARR. You've gone past the 200 million ARR. So majority of the growth is coming on the back of either new product launches, entering new markets, or unlocking new partners as channels for growth, and so on and so forth. And as you start doing all of this, your brand is also evolving unconsciously.
Yeah.
Right. So you need to go back and say, hey, am I doing justice to the brand vision again? So I think if you look at this graph, you have to constantly shuffle between growth and brand and growth and brand, because it is important to refine and optimize your brand positioning and tell your story in a way that is relevant to the stage at which your company is, right? Because your vision evolves, your business evolves, and so should your brand, right? And the third, that's the stage that we probably will be in the next couple of years, right? Where we are investing heavily in telling our vision, telling our story. What is the purpose of our brand, and why do we exist? Today, if we have to ask that question, I would say 80% of the people in the company will give a very consistent answer, 20% won't. But it's equally important for customers to understand that brand positioning, consistently, right? So that's where brand acceleration happens, and you have to invest heavily, and that comes with, you have to take a long-term view when you measure the ROI of investing in the brand.
Yeah, I agree.
And the last stage to me is to me a utopian state, which is customer lifetime value maximization, because it is basically your business is evolving year over year. At every stage, your ultimate North Star is customer lifetime value maximization, but it is not a stage you reach and you stop. It is a stage where you reflect and go back and optimize both your growth as well as your brand, as well as your product marketing engine. Right? For you to be able to come back and see whether you have unlocked true value from your prospects and customers.
Got it.
So to me, I look at the last stage as a North Star that you're constantly chasing, but it is also an elusive final stage. It's more of a loop, an optimizing loop that you go back and start refining your infrastructure and your teams and your vision and your brand positioning and everything.
Got it. And in the last one, Arun, I can visualize that you're putting some element of cross-sell and upsell in that.
Yeah.
But is there a larger thought behind that? Is there, when you say utopian, is there a concept of wallet share that you want to over time take more and more of that, or?
Absolutely. I think as the brand matures and as the product portfolio matures, especially if you're a company which has multiple products, I think over a period of time, the expectation is that you will start investing lesser and lesser in new customer acquisition and get more out of existing customers. And, it is important to think about unlocking that growth engine for any business, because one, it comes at a lower investment, because you're talking to existing customers, you've already spent money in acquiring them. So ensuring that you're driving cross-sell using a combination of marketing and sales, or your account management or customer success function, depending on which industry you are a part of, I think that becomes a very, very critical aspect to driving and sustaining that growth in the future. And even when it comes to cross-sell, I've seen different startups can take different approaches depending on the product strategy. For instance, the classic example is that of, say, an Atlassian, where you have one buying department or one persona, which is the developer that is buying your product. But then over a period of time, you sell them code management software, collaboration software, and so on and so forth. So you build products around a single persona and start cross-selling and upselling within that persona. Whereas if you take the example of Freshworks, we have a slightly different approach, where our vision is to become like the operating system for business software. And basically that means that any growing business will want multiple tools. Every department will want multiple tools. We want to be able to help them manage across different stages of the customer life cycle. So we sell to different personas, right? We sell to the sales head, we sell to the marketing head, we sell to the IT head, we sell to the customer support head.
Right.
So depending on what is your product strategy, what is your buying environment and the buying persona that you're going after, you may want to employ a different strategy when it comes to driving cross-sell and upsell. And again, going back to whether it's a complex product or a simple product, or a complex buying environment or a simple buying environment, you can do this directly through product, or you might have to invest in sales and marketing muscle power to be able to unlock that growth. Exactly.
And in some sense, I think you'll have to anyway tie it back with products, which is what you're talking about, that the platform, I think it's called Platform Neo, that Freshworks has, right? Which is then somehow tying it back together so that, you can provide that more value to the customers.
Absolutely.
Cool. Awesome. And then moving on to the last part, I do have more questions, but I'll let people ask, because, we do want to finish it in 5 minutes or so that there's more Q&A from the community members, right? But the last bit, you touched upon 3 elements, right? Product marketing, brand marketing, and growth marketing. Right. And I know that, and you talked about that, how Freshdesk, was initially targeting the SMB market and, used SEO and paid marketing heavily. Then, you did the brand marketing, so to say, to rebrand Freshdesk to Freshworks, right? And at the same time, roughly, Freshdesk or Freshworks started going after mid-market customers as well as enterprise customers. Right. And that made the, the marketing function complex, because you had to complement the inbound marketing, actually make it more complex to begin with. With better lead scoring, lead attribution, all the complexity that goes with that, but also to complement that by field marketing, account-based marketing, and so on and so forth. Right. So given all these moving parts, maybe, those 3 anchors that you use, product marketing, brand marketing, and growth marketing, Do you think those can be used to by startups to organize different types of marketing that they do, how that they handle?
So I think the way I look at it is I try providing a simple framework to look at the roles and responsibilities of each of these three functional groups, and it is important for each of these functional groups to understand their role, because then the KPIs they track, the kind of activities they do will largely differ, and also more importantly, it won't result in overlaps and confused ownership and accountability within the team, which is a big problem in large marketing organizations.
Yeah.
Right. So one framework that I offer is to look at the three functions in light of the three different life cycles. For me, the brand marketing function is meant to drive marketing activities around different stages of the brand's life cycle. So it is around brand establishment, brand definition and positioning, brand scaling, brand awareness, right? Taking strategic calls around, okay, do you want to be a house of brands or do you want to be a branded house, right? So they operate in the highest part of the funnel, which is the awareness. So but they are actually looking at the evolution of the brand across from seeds to scale, and looking at various things that they need to do to make the brand impactful across different stages of their life cycle. When I think of product marketing, and product marketing is looking at marketing across different stages of the product life cycle. And there are very different things that a product marketing team needs to do at different stages. For instance, in the product development stage, right? Often we talk about a product requirement document or a PRD, but a truly world-class product marketing team also builds a market requirement document, which summarizes the key trends that are shaping the market, and how that and the key customer requirements and customer behavior that should shape the product strategy, right? So doing that in the product development stage. Then comes the product positioning itself before you launch it. And that's product marketing. It's core to what product marketing needs to do to distill the essence of what the product's capabilities are from a features, benefits, outcomes perspective, right? And then being able to tell a story in a way that ties with the larger brand narrative, right? It can't be disconnected from what the brand message is, right? So that is the key role that product marketing plays during the the positioning phase. And
sorry, but would you put the GTM of products, individual products that you build, under this product marketing, or do you put it in a different place?
So I think GTM is a very broad term, but I do think when it comes to orchestrating a product launch, right? They are the ones, because they're closest to product and there is a vision behind the product. They have to partner very closely with various GTM functions. It could be marketing, it could be sales, customer success, or various other pre-sales teams to be able to define what the product launch strategy has to be. So from a product launch perspective, owning the launch plan, project managing the launch plan, and setting the KPIs to measure a successful launch is something that a product marketing team needs to do, right? And then once the product is launched, they own product adoption metrics, which is very critical, because and that's where they start measuring things like feature usage, right? Churn metrics, which are leading indicators of product market fit, right? Not being there, and so on and so forth. So that's the product adoption bit. And finally, when a product is a leader, right? The product has established leadership, a product marketer also becomes a thought leader, right? Who becomes a spokesperson for the product, who becomes a specialist, who goes on a sales call and lends credibility by offering depth in the conversation around product feature capabilities, right? So that's how they frame their job. If you think about their job in the context of this, there are very clear set of activities that a product marketer should do, and clear set of metrics that they should measure themselves by. And growth marketing to me is looking at marketing from the angle of the customer. So different stages of the customer life cycle. So if you look at, and that would be defined as acquisition, activation, engagement, retention, and advocacy, right? And that's how growth marketing operates. And growth marketing needs to think about key metrics and optimizing growth based on each stage of the funnel. So they don't stop with just customer acquisition or activation, right? That's why it's equally important, like you mentioned, to focus on cross-sell opportunities. Customer marketing becomes a very, very critical play as products and businesses start maturing. So if you look at the three functions as these with these three different lens, I think it offers clarity, it reduces overlap, and it creates more accountability for these three different groups.
It was very nice, very helpful. And I think you've talked about it. Maybe touch upon that a little bit more. You have said that each of them therefore also have different metrics.
Yeah.
And different success criteria.
Correct.
So some of maybe at a very high level, maybe if you can touch upon those. How do you for these three, how do you pick them?
So I think for the brand metric, it's very clear, right? So you look at aided awareness and unaided awareness. You look at purchase intent or brand preference, right? Yeah. And there are several ways to do it through primary research. You don't necessarily have to invest in expensive research to get an understanding. You can run empanel a survey through SurveyMonkey and run it across a specific demographic or demographic profile of customers, and you get a very quick answers to where you stand as a brand, right? But if you're a company which is investing in digital marketing dollars to drive YouTube campaigns and some of the other programmatic campaigns, then you can do a proper brand lift study to understand where in the brand spectrum your product is, right? When you look at product marketing, I think product marketing is the most controversial because oftentimes they do a lot of important strategic work, but not necessarily all of those activities have a very clear KPI around which they are measured. Having said that, I think one key metric that a product marketer or a product marketing team should definitely track and own is around win rates, right? Because when a prospect comes into the stage where they're actually having a conversation with a pre-sales or a sales guy is when you're really testing whether your messaging is working well or not, right? And the messaging for the product is completely owned by the product marketing team. So how they are enabling the sales team with the right messaging, but with the right content and collateral to be able to convert and win more customers is a key metric to look at, which is the win rate, right? The second thing I said is like feature adoptions, right? If there are new features that are being launched, how frequently are those features being used by various users, right? That's the second thing. But the third thing I would say, which I think is a very different way, and I think, but it's still a very relevant way to look at it, is it's almost like looking at an internal NPS score for the product marketing team, right? Because the product marketing function is an enablement function to the sales, marketing, and other go-to-market functions, right? So how well do they support and enable the internal sales teams, and looking at how well equipped they feel in doing their jobs is also a very good way of looking at the success or the effectiveness of a product marketing function.
Got it.
And the growth marketing is very easy. It's in the sense that it's a difficult job, but it's you directly measure the impact on revenue that you have, and you start from revenue and what percentage of revenue do you influence or do you source through marketing, and looking at sales accepted pipeline, SQLs, MQLs, and conversion rates across different stages of the funnel. So that's a fairly well-established science, and it's very it's heavily metric driven. Right? Correct. But having said that, I will still say that almost all these three functional groups, no one function is responsible for driving growth. All of brand, product, and growth marketing functions are in the business of driving growth for the business. So if you start thinking of marketing as a make it pretty cost center of sorts, then I think it loses its strategic value, and no team will be successful if they only think of their responsibility in that myopic sense.
Got it. Cool. So, and then last question before we open up for questions from audiences would be, I'm guessing corresponding to this, then obviously the marketing team structure also gets defined.
Correct.
There are 2-3 different functions, but through the journey, from the startup seed stage to the scale stage, right? As the company progresses, could you touch upon that? How would that happen? Would you start with one marketing function, then at some point, depending on certain metrics, certain markers, you'll split them up, and maybe how has been your experience there?
So one thing to think about is those 5 stages that I shared in terms of seed to scale, and what is the right and optimal marketing structure at each stage of growth, right? So like I said, when you're in the growth hustle stage, you need a very small entrepreneurial self-sufficient team. You hire as many people as much of bandwidth is required. Maybe one person for content, one person for creative, one person for digital, right? One person who is just an operational person who can do be all and end all. And you can start with a 4 or 5 member team, right? One person who's doing content, right? But when you start getting into brand establishment phase where you've already gone past the 10 million, 20 million ARR and brand becomes critical, then you need a some specialization. So you need people who have an understanding of the branding world, and then start adding that. I would still keep it as a lean team, which is focused on doing that. You can still do a lot with a very small team. But once you've hit 100 million, 200 million sort of a barrier, and you want to continue to sustain growth, is when you need a fully scaled structure, right? So I've spoken about the three different pillars, which is brand, growth, and product marketing. But within each of these functions, there are various sub functions. Like if I look at just the growth marketing engine, you have marketing operations, you have the SDR, you have digital marketing, you have field marketing, you have customer marketing, you have, so depending on how big and complex your business is, you will have to start building that specialized effort, all rolling up to delivering against a certain goal, right? So I would say when investing in marketing, always start small, because when you have a bloated team, it's always hard. As it is, marketing is a function that is always questioned a lot around how are you adding value to the business. So it is easier to start small with, and you can do a lot with a very, very small team, with a very, very small budget. And that's the beauty of marketing. But when you become a serious business, you have to scale your marketing team.
Got it. And where would you place the marketing, the platform, the ops and the platform team that you talked about, right? Which basically
does the backbone of everything that a marketing organization needs to do. So it cuts across all these three pillars. Right?
So it's horizontal.
Yeah, because you need to be able to capture signals at every stage of the customer journey, right? When they're a prospect all the way to a customer, and to be anything that happens from a marketing perspective needs to deeply integrate with the marketing infrastructure that you have laid, so that you're able to measure and optimize everything that the company does.
Got it. Perfect. Cool. Thanks a lot, Arun. With markets becoming more competitive, how do you evaluate new markets and growth in newer geographies?
That's a great question, and I think it's not just a marketing question; it's a business question, right? First, so the first thing to evaluate is the buying environment in that market itself. To look at one, okay, what are the entry barriers to your product there? Do you already have a very strong local incumbent, or is there a white space that you can go after, right? Yeah. Second is what is the buying behavior in that environment, right? So for instance, let's take the case of markets like Japan and Korea and China, right? When I was at InMobi, we had huge presence in some of these markets, and even at Freshworks, we have a pretty strong market in Korea and Japan. But the buying behavior is extremely different. The channels that people come on are very different. It's not just the language, but even culturally, the way they think about making purchase decisions are different, which means that you might have to invest in a local partner to enter that market, or you might have to have an on-ground team. You cannot just scale it through digital marketing. So these become considerations. And then how much of an investment appetite do you have in going after it? So I would start by first assessing the market size in that market. Second is the buying environment. So is it a complex buying environment or an easy buying environment based on some of the things I shared just now? And then you look at, okay, how much of an investment capacity do you have to be able to build the right go-to-market function in each of those markets, right? So in some markets, you can probably easily, if you're doing business in US, extending it to a market like Europe is easier. But yeah, you run into other challenges like GDPR, etc. So demand generation becomes more challenging. But if you're if you're in the US, you can easily go to Australia or India or some of the other English-speaking markets fairly easily, provided there aren't any local nuances or local incumbents or buying behavior is not different. But when you are going into these complex markets, then you have to take these things into consideration.
How does one think of product-led growth and creating product loops in early stages?
Now, I think I shared some tactics that really worked well for us. One is around driving referrals from your free users. Seeing how you can create network effects from various product features that you have. So if you are, for instance, Zoom as a platform already has an inbound network effect, right? Because every time you are inviting somebody, they are getting introduced to the product and they are more likely to use that product. Similarly, like in our context, I shared using a widget for powered by Fresh Chat or powered by Fresh Desk in every single email that goes. Right? As long as you're a non-paid user, you're a free user. You use that. The other thing that we do is if you have multiple products or features that you want to cross-sell to an existing customer, then you create those product nudges within your product itself, right? So start using your product as a channel for growth. Just as you have email and website and events and webinars and all of that stuff, your product and your end users coming into your product becomes a very a big channel that you can use to drive growth, right? So for instance, in Freshworks, if you log into the product, you will see something called as an omnibar, which is basically, you might be a Freshdesk user and you will see a small omnibar widget on the left top, and if you hover over it, you will see all the other products. It's like almost like a Google Gmail omnibar that you see in your Gmail, right? From there you can go to calendar, or you can go to docs or drive, or so on and so forth. So thinking about some of those aspects of how do you seed features which naturally drive virality, it's important. Second is thinking about referrals is important. And and I think some of these, you have to nudge the users to do more for you. So incentivizing them to take the right behavior is important. So any can throw.
Do you think it's possible for a company, say a complex kind of company, to actually, with the use of certain products, kind of benefit from, let's say, a simple complex, which is the product becomes simple, to start getting, people start using it, and then, buying environment remains complex because you can't change that. But is it possible to visualize moving from complex and then benefiting from simple complex, at least to get started, and then do ABM, account-based marketing, or whatever on top of that?
Honestly, I think it will be difficult. It's always easier to, the natural progression is to be in a complex, simple product in a simple buying environment and moving towards the complex, right? Today, if you think about it, a lot of legacy players who are actually sitting in the complex environment see a huge opportunity in going after the long tail and the small and medium businesses. But the product is so complex that none of them, it's to tear it apart and simplify the product is very, very difficult. Right. So unless simplicity is a guiding principle for you from day one, it's very hard to tear down a complex product and start simplifying it. So a lot of companies today are doing that, facing that, right? Even some of the large players want to start selling into SMB and mid-market, and they're finding it difficult. So much so that some of them are actually launching new products only focused on SMBs and mid-markets. Because they have to start from the scratch, because your product has already become too complex and you've built so many bells and whistles around the platform.
I think we have covered a lot of ground, but maybe as the last, just to conclude this session, maybe I can request you to share your final remarks, something that you like the audience members to take away with them.
I think to me, the three big takeaways from, at least which summarizes our conversation, is, like I shared with in my previous response also. The first thing is understanding your buying environment and the category that you operate in.
Yeah.
The second is understand the stage of the business that you are in and define the right marketing team and the structure for different stages of growth focused on the right metrics. And the third is start thinking about building depth in each of these product growth and marketing growth marketing functions, because each of those require dedicated focus, specialized skills. So as you start scaling, you will realize that you no longer can meet your goals by just hustling for growth, right? You need to start building your brand. You need to start specializing and building that functional depth in those three areas. So those three are I would say to me the three major steps that CMOs and founders need to think about as they start setting up and scaling their marketing organization.
Awesome. Thank you. And I think you also emphasize that marketing is not just an engine for growth, but also very important to think from a brand lens, right?
Absolutely.
Really building that brand, which then becomes a category-defining, category-changing brand, is a very, very critical element. So it has to be integrated.
And the truth is that even brand is a growth lever, right? Because a lot of actual revenue can be unlocked on the back of brand equity that you build. So you're able to command a premium in price, command a premium in many other aspects. So like I said, all aspects of marketing, branding, product marketing, and growth marketing, all three are great levers. And if you're in marketing, you should think of being a growth marketer. I mean, I would say as someone who's a champion of growth, rather than thinking of yourself as just a branding or a product marketing person. Everyone in marketing is ultimately tasked with the responsibility of driving growth for the business.
Yes, and the growth is the true north for every startup.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Arun.